Transparency is good.
Okay, we're live. Okay, I think we're just going to continue to try to wrap up the T-bill. We have one issue that it's the Senate Transportation Committee. We have one issue that we've been working on. It's a language for the Burlington Airport. Excuse me. And the House seems to have some issue with it. So I'd like to see what we have now. So we have a new proposal, or is that you got some language or something to look at, or?
So based on some informal feedback yesterday, there's some draft language that Anthea has been working with, which does the following. Words matter, what you call things matter, and the House seemed to really support working group as opposed to study. So we have reformed the name, which that's important, to working group. We also, in consultation, are proposing that maybe, if you recall, Michelle Boomhauer seemed to indicate 150,000 was the high end. So one thing that we thought might be useful is to pare that back to 100,000, 90,000 federal, and other than that, some small changes around the appointments. For example, one of the appointments, or the two that were for the CCRPC. Since the CCRPC in testimony indicated that they didn't necessarily have the board itching to do these appointments, and the city of Burlington has been advocating for more voices on this to allow the city of Burlington to appoint the representative of the underrepresented communities, so as to give them 3 of the 9 appointments. And as for the general aviation community, since again the CCRPC doesn't necessarily know those, but the city of South Burlington, where the airport resides, is in, I think it makes sense to have the city of South Burlington, who works closely with Beta Technologies, with all of the heritage aviation, that they could appoint that member so as to again address the concerns raised by the CCRPC. The last piece that would be in this draft would be something else I think I heard, which is an interest in a check-in report. So this January, the timeline is still the same that we proposed, but this coming January, February, the appointed chair of this committee would in fact report to Senate Transportation and House Transportation as to the composition and the status and the trajectory of this effort. So it would allow for whoever's sitting around this table a year from now or 8 months from now to course correct if there's a necessity to do so. There's one other proposed change, and this I'm really on the fence. I thought it would be useful to at least discuss, which is to have the governor's appointment be the designated chair as opposed to having them elect the chair. I thought that might address any concerns they might have that this could go off in directions that might otherwise, of course, the body could still vote and direct it otherwise, but I thought maybe that would be useful to at least consider. I know that's how some organizations, for example, the Senate, do establish leadership. So those are the changes that are in this draft amendment. I'm not sure if Senator Persley has anything else to add.
No, it's just an effort to find a middle ground with the House position on this issue so that we could get the bill going. One of my questions for Senator Chittenden is when we talk about the aviation community, I didn't know if we need to be more specific, because I think it says aviation committee at the airport. Like, does that include, individuals that have their Cessna parked there, or does it include, people that go there to watch planes? It's like, I didn't know if we need to be clear about the commercial aviation businesses, or I don't know. I wanted to make sure if we're talking about Heritage and Beta and those kind of companies that use the airport for commerce, that we want to make sure they're listed more clearly.
Fair enough. So they don't have a formed organization. I think that's where the CCRPC was hesitant. This actually came to us from Helen Reilly. She suggested this because as the airports in South Burlington, they have advocated and expressed interest in having more of a say as to the land uses, as well as the planning and the long-term strategic planning for the airport. There's the Burlington Tech Center is there. BTC is got components. So
do you think aviation community at the airport meets that, or do you think it needs to be more clear who we were talking about?
That's a good point.
Because when I first read it, whatever months ago, I thought actually meant those people that anybody uses the airport, including just individual plane owners. And maybe we do care about it. I mean, we obviously care about it, but that's not the focus really. It's really the entities that are on the property, basically.
For example, Brad Worthen, who we heard from, he has a plane and he stores it at the airport. But I would say in this proposed language, he could apply or express interest to the city of South Burlington, and the city of South Burlington weighing against other individuals who, Anthea says she's just grabbing copies and it's on her way. So I would argue that if Brad Worthen were interested, or if the community that has been organizing informally says, hey, Jim should or Betty should go apply, at least the city of South Burlington could weigh the applications that seems to represent that, since there isn't clarity as to who that group is.
Good.
Go ahead.
Since Michelle's here,
Sure.
get her just as she walked in. Yeah. I wondered if you,
Do we have a copy of that, right?
and he is bringing it down.
Oh, okay, all right.
If you could clarify AOT's position as far as their interest or willingness to participate in the Sarafort study. Because I've heard different views from what I thought the agency was saying before.
So the agency has no position in this topic. And we are willing to be a neutral facilitator, but we don't have a stake in the outcome. So we would provide the resources needed to facilitate whatever pathway arises.
And your neutral position, the same whether you're hiring a contractor or convening and moderating the meetings, because I think in the House version, it says that the agency, the secretary designate is actually running the meetings. Or our Senate language, we said you could hire somebody to do that. I didn't know if you had a position or what you prefer.
Well, what I would say is when the language says the secretary or their designee, designee means sort of a spectrum anywhere from me to a consultant. So I would, I would say that we have the same capability to address the internal needs of the agency's workload and address this request of this committee. I think the difference would be in the House version, there's no funding associated with the effort. So if we determined that we were going to provide the assistance, facilitation assistance in the convening, and the secretary, myself, or one of our staff are not available to do that function, then we would have to expend state resources to, to make that happen.
And you would just find the money to do that in addition to staff time to write the report, because the House says you're writing a report, but you don't have any money
We
to
would-
do it.
Yeah, we would write the report.
But you don't need money in the bill, you would just find money in your budget to do it.
I guess we would have to. I think that it's a bit problematic because the House's version doesn't rise to a scale of activity that would warrant us seeking FAA funding for the effort. So, I don't envision a big report. I envision,
So this report's gonna be dumbed down, it's not gonna amount to much, so really you're just wasting money.
I guess what I would say is this would be probably a report that simply outlines the activities that took place and what the participants of the committee discussion direction they decided. It would not be an analysis of anything. It would not be information about how other places have done this, what concerns and issues might arise, and so it would be very different than the outcome of the language that you've crafted.
So the intent when we first started was to look at a real possibility of regionalizing the airport. And so we're not even gonna get to that intent, and why would we even wanna go forward with anything else? Because all we're doing is caving to the other side to kill this thing. So if we're gonna effectively kill it, let's just kill it and not spend any money. Or let's stick to what we really wanted to do, which was to look at a viability or what a regionalized airport could do to the viability of our state. of this important area. I look at it this way, I look at 5 members of this committee that kind of strongly supported it. I think there's 15 members on that over there, and I think 2 of them don't support it. I think that we have the numbers to stick to our guns and stick to our original language and see this through. If we're just gonna do a study just to pacify 2 people, or maybe 3 people, and not come out with any real outcomes, I can't support that.
Can someone tell me, exactly what the difference is between ours and theirs? It's where we're weaker or stronger, or I'm very confused now.
Okay, so I think what would be the easiest way is if you look at this
All
document.
right, yeah, got that.
So going across it, the Senate proposal amendment was your original language, and the House had their version. And then Senator Chittenden, if you talked about your language a little bit. Okay, so if we are thinking about big differences,
Yes.
yours added a project to the White Book, and in the first version, it authorized $150,000 for the study. It was going to be 10% non-federal match and 90% federal match. In going across the columns in Senator Chittenden's sort of third iteration of the language, that decreases it to 100,000, and it has the same 90-10 federal, non-federal match.
Okay.
Both created an entity. Your original iteration, and I'm now going to be on the second page of the side-by-side. You created
Gene, excuse me, Gene, I don't, we weren't expecting, excuse me, just a second, so.
Joe, can I ask you about the 100,000 versus 150? We were talking to Chittenden yesterday. We had remembered that you had given a range of what you thought it would cost, and 150 was the high end. One of the concerns we heard from the House was spending the money on it, but we wondered if you thought we'd still get the quality product that we would want to do the real analysis by an expert to do about governance for 100, with a cap of 100 instead of 150.
Okay.
Senator Burchett, I believe that that range really was, initially I think I talked about $100,000 to do the study. But then in thinking about the structure of the committee, the activities of the committee, it was clear we were going to need another consultant to do the facilitation and, convening and minutes and agendas and all of that. Because our staff just don't have time for all of that. And so that's where I added the buffer in terms of my thinking about the cost of this. They cost less, I don't think it's gonna cost more, but.
And I hear you say something about the House's proposal wouldn't qualify for the $100,000 on the federal. I hear you say something like that.
What my characterization of that is that it's more of a discussion roundtable amongst the parties to figure out what could or couldn't possibly be agreed to move forward with. And so there's no analysis that needs to occur relative to that. I think the outcome of that process, in my mind, is that people, one outcome would be people get on board to say, yeah, we do need a governance analysis because maybe we want to move in this direction. We don't know, we need more information. It could be that they decide we're going to reconfigure the existing airport commission structure and its roles and responsibilities. Or it could be do nothing. Those are some of the options.
So the information that we're going to gather in the House's proposal is
Minutes from the meetings, basically.
right, and it's going to actually either not foster more discussion, or it's going to ask for another study to where we're trying to get to right now.
Exactly. So for the House's version, I don't see enough work there. There's no consulting role in that process. There's a facilitation role that'll either be covered by my staff or another entity that we designate. pretty sure the secretary is not gonna sit at those meetings, but I can't be 100% sure, but I would suspect that, you know, it would be a designee of the secretary.
And then one other significant difference is their language is silent on that $100,000. So before you even get to the question of what could be the source of the $100,000, they're not putting any money towards it, including in terms of like the reimbursements or the stipends. So it's not retaining the consultant, and it's not providing any money to the people who participate in the work group, and it's not having any authorization or appropriation for the work group.
For this to be a serious effort, to your point, which I greatly agree with, Senator Ingles, I think the money is essential. Whether it's 100 or 150, if it doesn't matter, so to speak, to the House, then I would just go with what Michelle thinks would make the most sense. But for this to be something that will produce something that will inform decisions in 2024, I think the consulting dollars are essential.
And I think Senator Chittenden, what you said is the money is essential, and at the end of the day, it's not our money. It's not our money that we are actually, $15,000 of it is, but other than that, we have a real chance to have substantive, you know, information of whether this is something that can move forward or not. Other than that, why do you do it? I mean, why would we even want to do that? I was pretty excited about this. I think Senator Mazza was pretty excited about this. I think we all were pretty, you know, excited about the possibilities of what could happen. That's the outcome I'd like to see. What could happen? And at the end of the day, it's not binding anybody to anything. It just gets you to a point to where it's a further conversation with, as I said to the mayor, listen, we're all going to study. If you don't want to participate, you don't need to. You don't have to do anything that this study comes out with. But I think that for the monies, and I hate to ever use the word free. I'm a conservative Republican, nothing's free. But for a little bit of the money that the state has to put up, I think we're going to get a quality product and then some decisions could be made after that.
Back
Okay.
to 150 if you move forward.
Sorry.
So we'll put it back to 150 if you move forward with your alternative proposal. Getting to the creation of what this is, they use working group, you use study committee. In Senator Chittenden's alternative proposal goes back to or maintains working group, sort of a small distinction, I would say. But the purpose of what it's created for is different. So in the House's version, they're creating this working group to, as you know, Michelle has accurately described it, kind of a roundtable, a discussion group. So it's created to discuss current issues of regional concern at the Burlington International Airport, period. That is what it exists to do, discuss current issues of regional concern. The language that you had in your original version and has maintained in Senator Chittenden's proposal is tasking this entity, working group study committee, to examine the existing governance structure and alternatives to the existing governance structure of the airport and to report its findings and recommendations. So it is more directed towards recommendations, outcomes, and looking at governance specifically called out, not just areas of regional concern. Another point of difference between the two, and I think you could spend a lot of time talking about this, is the membership. So your iteration, which Senator Chittenden maintains the makeup generally and has had some changes to who's doing the designating, had 9 voting members and 2 non-voting members. Theirs had a facilitator and 6 members. Let's talk about the involvement of the Agency of Transportation first. Your iteration has the Secretary of Transportation or designee as a voting member. Their iteration has the Secretary of Transportation or designee as the facilitator of the working group, but they're not a member of it. So it's tasking the agency with sort of standing in the shoes of that facilitator role, which in your version, they could contract out if need be, if they don't have the staff capabilities to do. And then there's different memberships. So I think maybe it would be just more helpful to the committee now to talk about some of the changes that Senator Chittenden is proposing in his new language, which key one is the governor is appointing the individual who shall be the chair of the working group, and not leaving it to the working group to pick a chair. In this iteration, governor gets to say who chairs, And then in Senator Chitten's language, there's a little bit of difference in terms of who's designating. Instead of being the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, that's designating someone to represent individuals such as Black, Indigenous, or persons of color, immigrants, et cetera, that are adversely affected by the airport. It would be the City Council of the City of Burlington in consultation with the mayor that designates that individual. And then for purposes of the general aviation organizations, instead of it being designated by the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, it would be designated by the City Council of the City of South Burlington. So giving one more designation to the City of Burlington, so they're getting 3 designations, one more designation to the City of South Burlington, they're getting 2 designations, and then the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission's only involvement is the director or designee is a non-voting member of the working group. So it's taking out a little bit of the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission's involvement.
My question is to the rest of the committee, just to make sure that my thought is done the same way. What do you guys see that these, what's their roles? What are the roles of the people that we're tasking as the study moves forward? Are they gonna determine the outcome of what the study is, or are they advisory? Are they participant? Or what do they do?
The role I saw them as overseeing the work of the contractor and kind of the scope of work. So I think that's why it's important, because even though we have a consultant doing the work on the governance, those that are kind of hiring the consultant are going to say, these are the issues. They're going to talk about the reports that have done in the past and add recommendations on governance, and then have the consultant help them lay those out, the pros and cons of the different options, and oversee it and kind of sign off on the final report with the and then look at what the consultant did and give recommendations at the end.
And there's also significance there because it talks about how there needs to be identified by a majority of the voting members of the working group as warranting study. A majority of the voting members of the working group determines warranting study for other issues, and make recommendations on the governance structure of the airport, and Senator Chitten's having a proposed language speak there, as supported by a majority of the voting members of the working group. So they're working with a consultant, but there is a strong concept of majority of the working group behind recommendations of what's looked at, unless it's something specifically recommended by the consultant.
So this is a pretty common model I see at the municipal level. So when we were looking at possibly consolidating schools, we had a body similar to this representing the public interest with a dedicated amount of money for consultants, and they would meet and they would just give general impressions of directing where the energies of those would go. So this doesn't seem foreign to me. So it seems like a common configuration. I'm seeing some nods over here, but I just want to highlight thank you for that walkthrough. This is not adding 2 additional seats. It's really just taking the CCRPC out of the appointment process and having the City of Burlington, City of South Burlington.
And you answered kind of my question, both of you have, which I appreciate very much. What I wanted to know, because I don't get a chance to do that all the time, at the end of the day, is it just kind of trying to keep people happy because they're on the board, or are they really going to have a role? And is it going to be something that you're familiar with, because I'm not? And Senator Birchlick, maybe you as well. Maybe you see this a lot more than what I see. I just don't see this a lot. So I would defer to you guys if you're happy with that.
Does anyone know what the income is for Burlington? We asked that question, and I guess that's not public knowledge.
What the director of aviation makes?
No.
No, what the
Revenues to-
bring Burlington. We asked that question. All they said was they bailed them out years ago or something. Well, that was years ago. I don't know what you meant by bailed them out. But is there a separate line in the budget that said net income from the,
Mr. Chair, the FAA regulations don't allow municipally owned airports to essentially subsidize the operations of their sponsoring government. Like typically the money generated has to stay at the airport. I think the exception is there's fee for service arrangements and things like that. So like we had a municipally run airport in Philadelphia where the aviation fund would pay for like the lawyers that work for the city or for the police officers that work there. But there are, and Anthea can go into this in more detail, but typically the feds don't allow you to operate an airport to sort of generate.
But I don't think
Other ways
that,
to
you
make
weren't
money.
asking that. You were asking like just generally how much money does the
Yeah.
airport generate? It could be something that's in the City of Burlington's annual report or some information about it that you could discern from looking at the annual report. And that is public.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we hear the mayor say that it was about 500,000? Didn't he say, because I thought, the reason why I stuck with that number is because I said, well, it's kind of ironic that that's the same amount of money that the legislature gives the airport. And so I just thought,
Financial benefit is exactly that. I think 4 years ago, we pinned it down to about $380,000 came from the Airport Enterprise Fund into the Burlington for fee for services, for valid things. And the other places where the city of Burlington has sway is all the contracts. I mean, this goes through, there are ways to have that be beneficial, including the police officers. So the police officers union contract, these are additional positions that they can persuade. And right now, the mayor of Burlington, whoever that is, puts in their aviation director, which is a salary of $150,000, since that is entirely an appointment of the manager of Burlington. So those are some of the pinch points where there's benefit to the city of Burlington.
I think the biggest thing to understand is in terms of the airport revenues, one of the biggest cost factors, in addition to maintaining the facility, and they do get some FAA money to help maintain the facility, but it's the reconstruction or additional construction of infrastructure at the facility. And like the $500,000 match we provide to them goes directly to matching FAA grants. So in other words, if they don't have, if they have to prepay the costs, and then once they present us with an invoice that matches an FAA grant, then we pay them the money. It's not like we just write them a check carte blanche. And if you basically has been major reconstruction to accommodate the F-35s. Some of that paid for by the military unit sponsoring them, but in order to reconfigure some of the other areas, there have been investments there. And I think also there is a plan, they've done some renovations on the terminal building, but there's a planned major reconstruction of the terminal building area that these funds would match as well. Just to put it in context, though, there are a lot of costs, and the police and whatever are minimal, but the city of Burlington is the beneficiary, if you want to say, in terms of they get to provide that service.
They could put a part of the mayor's salary in there too.
but I think they do.
10%.
Okay, that's we have.
Okay, so differences in who is on the working group or the study committee. Next huge difference. You have language, and Senator Chittenden maintains this in his additional proposal, having the assistance for the committee be specified, and shall have the administrative, technical, and legal assistance of the Agency of Transportation, which shall be required to contract with an independent third-party consultant with expertise in airport governance, and may contract with an additional person to serve as a neutral facilitator for the committee if such assistance cannot be provided by an employee or employees of the Agency of Transportation. House version is silent on that. I think that with the Secretary of Transportation or designee being the facilitator, a lot of the administrative burdens in terms of like having it be an open meeting and minutes and things like that is going to fall to the Agency of Transportation sort of by default there. Yours specifically calls it out, and because you're providing $100,000 or $150,000 for it, there's money to cover those costs. And then because you're having this consultant, you also include language, and not change Senator Chittenden's proposal, to have the Agency of Transportation work with the working group to do an RFI and an RFP for the retention of that consultant. Next huge difference is the powers and duties of the working group or the study committee. First one is the same. Both versions task the working group or study committee with reviewing prior reports and calling out the three from 2021, 2013, and 1985. Then you have a big divergence in that the House version is very focused on discussing current issues of regional concern, exploring opportunities for regional collaboration. Notice there's no mention of governance here yet, and analyzing what actions could address any issues of regional concern regarding the airport, and then preparing a report. Your language was kind of silent on that. Let's sit, talk, discuss regional concerns before getting to the nitty-gritty details of recommendations on governance structure that have been made, if there are other ways to change the governance structure and sort of what are sort of these next steps that could have more of a institutional change. In Senator Chinda's proposal, he takes items 2, 3, and 4, the discussion, the exploration, and the analyzing of that regional concern and other opportunities for collaboration, and has that be almost an initial step that needs to be taken before getting to looking at the advantages or disadvantages of any of the different governance models that exist. So taking some of that discussion.
So Senator Chitten's version says, let's find some fact before we have discussion, and the House says, let's just start discussing before we find any fact. Is that's?
So I would say both versions say review prior reports. And then the House's version says discuss areas of concern. Senator Chittenden's proposal says review, discuss areas of concern, and then do something with it. House's version stops at discuss areas of concern.
Okay.
Would you say that was accurate?
What are they, why don't they want to do the third one? Just
The third part's what's going to cost money.
But it's not even, again, it's not state money that's doing that. Michelle's found the money to end up with some result, hopefully. Maybe it won't be result, but maybe it will be. And maybe from that it can be built upon.
I want something that's got some teeth in it that at least tells us something here, you know, I mean, otherwise you're just wasting our time to study and throw it in the wastewater basket like we do all studies.
Right. It's just kind of
Not
something
that we,
else.
not that we can change it, at least we'll make it public knowledge that this is what the facts are. And this is what you could do in the future. If Burlington's interested in selling it or whatever, at least you got something to work with. So I'm just trying to get to that. I don't know how we do that. So what do we do in that section? Any ideas?
Well, I like the new language. I think it threads the needle. I think what I'm trying to do here is get the House to yes. I hear that. I really appreciate all the time they spent. I think this is incorporating the feedback that I heard in some of their discussions, in seeing that they saw the working group's title as important, giving Burlington another seat. We thought about the money, but it doesn't seem like the money is the major sticking point. And this has that discussing context that they were looking for. So I'm new to these negotiations, and not negotiations, but the final reconciliation, and I welcome advice on how to get this across the finish line.
So I'm a lot like this. I'm leaning on you guys because you guys are in the middle of it. You guys are doing it, and I like where we're at right now as far as to, as Senator Mazza says, is to get it to for something for teeth. If you guys are working on language to try to get them to go along with it, I'm good with that. I just want this study to do something at the end of the day. If we've got to massage the language to have them feel better, I'm okay with that. But I don't want to spend money not to have a result.
Okay, how do we do it?
Yeah, I asked last night of Anthea, based on her interaction with both committees on this, what suggestions she'd have, and she made some great suggestions, and you see that in here. I didn't have the luxury. Do you have any suggestions, Michelle, to where this could also get to address some of the House concerns?
No, I think that you've done a good job of addressing many of them, and it does also seem like if we're going to put the energy into having these people spend time together, we would be better off in the end coming out with something that, at least like Senator Mazza said, even if it's not acted upon, it's documented now. And that happens a lot with our studies where, we, have a lot of rail studies that talk about getting trains between Gary and Montpelier.
That was a good one.
And, and we do spend the time and effort, but now, it will be updating prior information that was in prior studies to the current day matter. And the scenario of the airport is very different now than it was then. And so, it may not go anywhere right now, but I think it does form the basis for understanding a situation that has been fraught for many years.
Do either Michelle or Tom, Senator Chin, didn't know if the governor has weighed in on airport governance issues in the past? Just if we're going to have an appointment from the governor, I don't know if people will see that as biased one way or the other.
I do not recall the governor making statement on this particular topic in my time.
Yep.
Do you see the governor appointing the chair as being a good thing from where the House is, or is that not as?
I can't weigh in on the other side.
I don't know what their feelings on that would be.
Do you have an opinion on it?
Michelle is saying to herself, look, I'm dealing with $832 million goddamn budget.
Well, let's go. Right.
No comment, Senator.
Sorry, I just had to get that.
I moved language from column 1 to column 2. That was my contribution.
So where are we?
The only question I have for this committee is, do you think that having the governor appoint the chair is getting us closer to where the House would like to be, or?
I don't care about that. That's more your guys' foray as far as where that, if the House doesn't like that, whatever. I don't know if that,
Yeah, I think it's right.
Can you clarify for me, Senator Chittenden, in the current language that you've proposed, is the governor appointing the chair from within the list of people, or is he appointing an external? His appointee will be the chair.
Yeah.
Okay. So he'll be finding somebody that's neutral to the situation, with the thinking would be.
And that's the one designation that has limited parameters on it. So it's not like it needs to have, like in H52, the governor's appointment needed to have governance experience. Just governor gets to appoint and happens to be chair.
That really just came out of the blue. I'm just trying to brainstorm on addressing some of what I've heard.
well, providing that you guys are happy with the language. My question is where does it go from here? I mean, are you guys gonna meet back with the House or
Well,
chair? What do you?
We'll give a proposal. And that's our final proposal. If that's what the committee wants to do. That's otherwise we'll go to committee conference. Simple as that.
Is that informally done?
Kind of like we did yesterday, right?
Yeah, just back and forth and, we'll just do it. That's the way it's gonna be done. It's just present it to them. What else can we do? We'll just go back and forth forever. We're gonna draw a line sooner or later.
Out of the minds of what you just said. I mean, we're $900 million and we're fighting over 150. And
Yeah.
all we're trying to do is get something that's got some teeth in it and something that's got real meat in it.
This is the only thing that's holding us up.
Right.
Let's just finalize the thing. This is our proposal. This is our final proposal. It's over. So is that what I'm hearing? Is that what we want to do?
I mean, I don't know if that's, yeah. But, I definitely support the language. I don't know what the best process is, but we can.
Well, we gotta give it to them and say,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
this is we met, this is what we decided on. If we don't, we'll have to appoint a committee conference and continue the discussion. The best I can say. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Anthea, any thoughts about that? How to do that?
Oh, that is also not something like that.
Okay, no, that's the way I would do it. Is that all right?
I'm good with what I've heard. I mean, I think we're all kind of in agreement of where it's at.
Senator Mazza, I don't know if anybody in the room knows the procedure on this, but the question I have, because I don't know, is, so now you have the T-bill, a House generated bill in your possession. And can
Tack it on that.
you call a conference committee on a House generated bill, or do you have to send this language back? Anthea might know.
Best idea.
We can call it.
Okay.
So they could, the options now are, do nothing but die. I don't think anyone wants to happen. Call for a conference committee or have your further proposal of amendment. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, that we're gonna do. Yes, go ahead.
Would you be willing to draft the amendment, putting the money back in, and then having one version with the governor appointing being the chair, and one without, with the other language saying the word group shall elect the chair? And then would you feel comfortable with going back to the House at some point for those two options?
You could just draft the same version with those two options.
Just so we can.
so
You can just say.
one document and says like option 1,
Right,
option
yeah,
2. Okay, the one thing that is a little wonky there is if you are putting the money back is fine, but if you are not having the governor appointment be the chair of the working group. It's on page 2 of the side-by-side, taking out who shall be the chair of the working group, but it's also adding back in, I think it's gonna be on the last page, the subdivision that says the committee shall select a chair from among its voting members at the first meeting. So you just, if you're explaining it to them, if I'm not there, just gonna need to say, like, option 1 changes something in 2 places, option 2 changes it in 2 places.
That's like, if I may, just to finish this up, you know, forget the governor appointing the chair. If we just go back to the original language, make it simple, I don't think we need to complicate it with that.
Especially where I don't think it's a bargaining point in any way or a sticking point.
Just one other thing, just so everyone's in the loop on it, the other significant change that was made, and that your language only had the one report back in January of 2024. Looking at the timeline of the House's version, they had a report back coming in on on January 15th of 2023. You had your report on January 15th of 2024. Senator Chitten's proposal adds an interim oral report to the House and Senate Committees on Transportation in February of 2023. So there's that like touchback partway through, which presumably the discussions about regional concern, et cetera, will have happened at that point. So you are, to the extent that the House's version had an expedited timeline and something coming back to the General Assembly in 2023, Senator Chittenden's proposal maintains that.
I'm good with that.
All right, we'll cover this thing. Okay.
Okay, I will get you and Senator Kirchlich updated side-by-sides and updated amendments, and then do what you want with them.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that. I'm so sick of talking about this. Okay, we're offline, please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry to use so much time on this.
No, I think it's important. I mean, it's,
Well, you're the chief senator, so.
I think it's exciting stuff.
Mike, if you would take us off of YouTube.